Get ready to learn with us on Bass University Live. Bass University Live starts now. Welcome to Bass University Live, everybody. Excited to have one of our boys back with us, Riz. We've got Alec Morrison. Keeps making waves out here.
Yeah, keeps making waves, racking up wins. Got another Toyota Series win this year back in March down on the Kissimmee chain. And it sounds like, one of those just magical kind of tournaments where you fall into rhythm with the fish. And that's it's such a special place to be in. And it's so hard to come by. And, I'm excited to talk with Alec about how that tournament went, to have fish swimming by, be in the zone, be in the transition, be on the highway, so to speak. So, it should be fun to learn how that one really went down.
Yeah, I look forward to it, and he dominated. I want to give a big shout out to the Cowan brothers, Keith and Zach. What's up, Chuck? The dominated tournament we both fished on the Chesapeake, and that was quite spectacular.
Yeah.
They set a record there with 14 years of the Chester County Opens. They weighed in the heaviest 5-fish limit that has ever been weighed in, and it's really awesome. Awesome to see the Chesapeake. Jake and I had a great tournament. We finished third place. Really a fantastic start to our season as a team, and that's tremendous fun day for us.
Yep.
But oh my God, the Chesapeake is just it is really a great place to be fishing, Riz. As I was driving around, Jake and I were looking for our next fishing place. It seemed every boat I drove past, Riz, was catching or culling a fish.
Reeling them in.
Crazy. That's freaking amazing.
Yeah. It was it was one of those special Saturdays that seemed to happen once a year on the bay. And boy, they touched down in a big way as far as the fish are concerned. They landed on an area with a lot of boats, and there was a lot of fish getting reeled in for that. So it's a fun time to be out there. So but congrats to the Cowans, man. Keith and Zach, both great fishermen, and it's not without time. Between the two of them, they have a pretty good body of work out there for learning the bay, learning the baits, learning the strategies, learning the patterns, and it's cool to see that come to fruition in a mega bag like that. You know what I mean? And here's a picture of their 27.5 pounds on Saturday with the Chester County Bassmasters. All bigs.
Two 6-pounders that day. What a beautiful day. Congrats. And for those of you that have never fished the Chesapeake, it's grass flat. It's real similar to Florida fishing, honestly. It reminds me of Lake Okeechobee or all the big grass lakes down at the Harris chain, where you get to see everybody. You kind of see where the biomass is collecting, and as evidenced by all the boats out there fishing for them. So it's kind of that's very much what it's like, open water fishing.
A lot of similarities there, Florida anglers in the Upper Bay seem to jive pretty well and throughout history. There's been Florida came up here and beat Jersey, Maryland, and Delaware in a Bass Nation event several years ago. So
that's right.
Some similarities. Right. And today's guest, Alec, boy, he spent a good chunk of time in both of those zones, Pete. He's an angler from the Northeast, hails from Lake Champlain. He's also spent a good bit of time on our home body water here on the Upper Chesapeake. And in the latter part of his life, he's been spending a lot of time in Florida, Pete, over the winters, and really understanding Florida fishing. And so it's no surprise that we got to see him hoist another Toyota Series trophy this year back in March. So,
well, we are brought to you by Humminbird, Minn Kota, Redfin, Thump Gel, all very, very important for me personally and Jake this weekend in our tournament success that we had. So I want to give a big shout out to those groups. And without any further, and by the way, I also want to give a shout out to the folks at GRAT. Who make the Sneaky Pete 2.0. Steve Kennedy's there. Oh, there it is. It's the remastered what was it, like 15 prototypes Steve went through torturing those guys until he got it the way that he wanted it. And if you guys you guys know Steve, he's meticulous and he is a swim bait, nut. And we're going to be releasing Steve Kennedy's seminar very soon that he worked with us at the Bassmaster Classic. And the folks at GRAT are really helping us out, Riz. And I've got to hook you up with some of the content that they're going to be providing us to help us get Steve's messaging, teaching across so well. So shout out to those guys. And of course, Whitewater Gear. We love their gear, and we're wearing it. And you're looking sharp over there, Riz. Jake's getting big, man. He's wearing my Whitewater gear. He's taking my stuff now. He's about the same size as me.
That's good. That was evident on the front of the Bass Cat on Saturday, Pete. It looked like there was 2 grown men now fishing on the front of that boat. So,
dude, and I want to give a shout out. It's easy for me to praise. You love praising your kids, but the decision and the decision, and we're going to talk to Alec about decisions because this was key for his win, and it's always key. But our successful, we didn't win. We did really well, but our successful decision came from Jake. He
awesome.
He ran with a gut feeling that he had. We ran with it together and got us around the big. So
awesome.
That's very, very cool.
Yep.
But dominant win by the Cowans.
Yeah.
Dominant win by Alec Morrison. Let's bring him in. There he is, the champ with a an extremely dominant win down in Florida. Congratulations, man.
Hey, thank you, man. It was just one of those tournaments I'll look back on forever. It was definitely the highlight of my career, I would say. It was the most fun I've had in an event, just as far as preparation and the things I knew going into it, and just how everything really lined up. And that's often Florida is about. Really, it's about looking at the moon phase and the rising, cooling temps, and trying to line everything up right to get an understanding of what those fish are doing. Because at the end of the day, it is very day to day in Florida. Those fish move based on weather patterns and conditions more than I've ever seen any other population of fish do, essentially. And they're so related around the spawn and what they need to be doing. And at times, like in this tournament, when I had things really dialed in and I knew what I was after, it almost makes it look easy. But then, as you guys know, there's plenty of times when you're in Florida and you're just absolutely grinding all day looking for any kind of clue, and it's just it could be a very tough place in the same sense. So it's cool when things get to line up like they did and get to see a bunch of those big bass come across the stage.
I want to talk about I got a few points because we want to dive in. Rich and I were talking. We want to dive into the technical side of it because you are very technical and understanding the fish movements. But I've got a list for you.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Rivette, John Cox, Drew Gill, Brock Mosley, Ronnie Moore was in this tournament. I'm going down the top 10 of on this top 10. it's like the who's who of bass fishing, and you won with a 15-pound lead over second place. That's fantastic.
It was crazy. It was cool. Definitely got to showcase, you know, some of those Kissimmee bass. You know, the tournament went out of Lake Toho, but Kissimmee is kind of like the mother lake in my eyes. You know, Toho has got incredible population of big fish. It's super consistent. You know, in the last few years, we've seen a lot of big wins come out of Toho. But as far as it goes for me, you know, Kissimmee is always kind of in my eyes like the mother lake, the one that, like, if you could figure out Kissimmee and completely dial it in, then your fish will outweigh whatever you catch in the other lakes, in my mind. And that might not always be the case because there's giants in all of them. You know, people win out of Cypress, people win out of Hatchinahaw, people win out of Toho. And, but I've always kind of been the one to grind it out on Kissimmee, even when it's like the toughest out of all the lakes. And it was cool to really mesh everything together and catch all those big ones.
You caught big ones. I have 37 pounds, 1 ounce.
Mm-hmm.
That's an MLF record.
It was awesome, man. And I wish you could have seen it go down, because it quite literally went down in about an hour and 10 minutes.
Get out of here.
Yeah, it was super cool. And you know, I wasn't working with a ton of areas in this tournament. I basically had 3 areas in mind, and you know, it was really about how I could, you know, maximize my 3 hours of scope within 3 areas. And then I also had a plan in each area as far as the no scope period went. But, you know, what was interesting about this event is, you know, from a distance leading up to the event, I'm looking at weather conditions, looking at patterns. You know, we had some cold fronts rolling through prior to the event. Cold fronts followed by a warming trend and a moon is about the best case scenario you could ask for.
Right.
And things were lining up pretty good. With the moon didn't line up perfect, but the weather conditions did. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of us knew that there was going to be a ton of fish up shallow, a ton of fish in, you know, in the round reeds, flat reeds, pads, Kissimmee grass, and a mixture of all those things. You know, they use just about everything to spawn there. And you just got to figure out the right mixture. But, you know, following, you know, getting into practice and seeing how things were on the beginning of practice, you know, there was a ton of fish up shallow still from that last moon. Conditions were good, so they were staying up there. I caught like a couple real big ones fishing shallow, no scope, in practice, and some of them were spawning and some were staging fish. But as practice in the tournament progressed, it became very clear to me that the real big ones were in fact leaving. Like, it absolutely didn't seem like any were pulling up. You know, even those ones that were staging up shallow and not spawning yet, it became apparent that they were just leaving. You know, the amount of big bites I'd get shallow, no scoping, fishing very good stuff too, like very high percentage places, and just it was just essentially lacking the quality bites like every day. And so what I initially thought was I could scope some real big fish in the morning, and then, you know, I could really fish slow and methodical and fish through these high percentage areas in the afternoon, you know,
Right.
flipping, throwing a swim jig, throwing a Senko, doing that kind of deal, and fishing real slow to try to get 1 or 2 big bites during that no scope period. However, it really just didn't, it never transpired into that at all. was really able to hone in on a couple key places that, we all talk about and we all are looking for down there, but it's so hard to find. But these highway type scenarios where, you have a large area that big ones are using to spawn, and then there's like almost like a small pathway that they're using to travel in and out.
All come in.
And all of these really, really big fish I caught were essentially all staging in some sort or passing through in some sort. And a lot of them were actually leaving the spawning areas. A lot of them were spawned out. More of them were spawned out that I weighed than were pre-spawn. And, these fish were leaving these areas, leaving these grass areas. And I found kind of the route they were traveling in order to get onto a nice, hard, clean bottom shell area. And in that area, there was a ton of bait, everything they needed: bluegill, crappie, gizzard, shad. And day one, I had a strong feeling that I could catch some big fish in this area. So I started there, and, as big fish go, typically your best opportunities are in low light. So first thing in the morning, and we don't have an option to, fish in the evening. So first thing in the morning, I opted to turn my scope on, start my 3 hours. And the first bass I threw at on my first stretch, like 10 minutes in, was a 9.9. And I was like, well, maybe we'll win this tournament. And I ended up leaving that spot after an hour and a half, and I had like a mid-7, a mid-8, and a 9.9. And I was like, okay, hour and a half in, I got 3 big ones. I decided to, instead of going back through that area, I decided to make a short run and fish a little area with some staging fish on it. And actually, these staging fish were all on structure, and these fish, in fact, were pre-spawn. I only know this because the area they were in, they typically don't spawn until much later on. So they're probably honestly spawning around this time now. But these fish, these secondary fish I ran to, were just fish on piles, kind of staging. There wasn't a ton of them, but if I could get an angle on 2 or 3 of them, I figured I could get 2 to bite. And that's essentially what happened. I got 2 to bite, like a mid 2-pounder and like a 5 something. And I actually lost like a 5.5, like at the net. I ended up getting 3 bites there. And that was essentially my day one. I had the 31 pounds with like a 265 in my bag. And I did a bunch of no-scope, during my no-scope period, I fished a bunch of pads, a bunch of reeds that I shook some big ones off and gotten a good amount of male keeper bites in practice. And I was really just trying to upgrade one time, but it never happened. I caught a ton of fish during my no-scope period on day one, but none of them were just fish that were going to help me at all. So, day one was really about just like 2 little areas, that first main area, and then a secondary staging area with some fish on brush. And that kind of wrapped up day one. And, day 2 was definitely a lot slower. And that first area, I made a pass through, and I saw 3 fish on my first pass, and I got 2 to react to my bait, but none of them bit. So I spent my first hour on that pass I caught those 3 giants on the first day, and never got a bite. Actually, you guys were talking about decisions earlier, and this was a pretty key decision I made. And instead of running to that secondary staging area on brush, I decided to kind of abandon and spend the rest of my 2 hours of scope time actually in North Cove, which was essentially my 3rd area. And there's a ton of brush and hydrilla and good pads and a lot of some of the best habitat in Lake Kissimmee and North Cove. And, you know, I kind of, those last 2 hours of my scope period on day one, I run into North Cove and pretty much salvage my day. I get five big bites and I catch 4 of them. And had the 22 and change for day 2, which could have been a lot more actually. I weighed day 1, I weighed a small fish and had 31. I had 262 in my bag on day 1.
Oh my God.
Day 2, I had a 2 even, and I lost the biggest fish I ever hooked on Kissimmee. And Jody White was actually taking pictures of me when it happened, but he watched me get my butt whooped by like a easy 10 to 12 pounder.
Oh,
it broke me off on straight 20 on a run. And it was just crazy. But yeah, he got to see that go down, and it would have been nuts. I almost had another 30 plus on day 2 if I would have landed that one. But overall, super good. Those were the only 2 bass I lost the entire event, like a 5 something on day 1 and
can a 10 to 12
on day 2. But
can a 10 to 12 pound Florida strain like get its whole body out of the water on a jump?
No, not usually.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they don't usually get all the way out of the water, but I actually never saw this one with my eyes. I only saw them on scope.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So you're gauging it. Yeah, I got you.
Pretty confident in what it was. Is definitely. It was kind of crazy because I was fishing a little shallow brush pile that's like sticking out of the water.
Right.
At the time, it's only like 5 foot, 6 foot, and I'm like fishing this brush pile, and I just caught like a 4 pounder.
Yeah.
And kind of scoped around the pile, and I watched this fish, the giant one, actually swim in out of open water and set up on the pile, set up like right up on top. And it was so big that at first my initial reaction was I was like hesitant to even throw on it. Like I was like,
this is a manatee.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what the heck just swam up and set up on the pile. Like I didn't know if it was going to be a giant catfish or what the heck it was going to be, but I never really catch those out there, like big catfish on Kissimmee or anything. But man, I threw on it. And the second I threw on it, it just gave me the best reaction ever. Like it gave the absolute telltale signs that it was like a fish over 10 pounds just in the way it was reacting to my bait. And it bit, and I hooked it, and it absolutely whooped my butt. That's all I can say. It whooped my butt and broke me off. And, you know, at that point in time in the tournament, you know, I was happy with my day. I knew I had over 20 pounds, but I was really thinking that fish and then the fish from the previous day was going to cost me, you know, just because it's hard to get that many big bites in a day. And, you know, I've spent a ton of time on Kissimmee, and I've spent countless days where I go out there for 12 hours and scope, and I can't catch more than 12 pounds or, you know, doing everything, flipping, throwing chatter, whatever. You know, there's just been a lot of days where Kissimmee has proved to me that it's a grinder's lake, and it's hard to put 3 days in a row there together. It truly is. But, you know, I was still feeling good. I had a small lead after day 2. Brody Campbell caught a big bag and moved up in the second. He had 30 pounds on the second day. So really, just going into the final day, it came down to him and I essentially, and we were just quite a bit above third place in the rest of the field. So it was interesting. It made for a good tournament going into the final day. That's for sure.
When you were scoping, how were you triggering these fish on scope?
Really a mixture of stuff. You know, they're feeding on a lot of things. Bluegills, crappie. I'm sure they do eat like little catfish and stuff and little tilapia. And then they also eat gizzard shad quite a bit there too. And, you know, it's like something you see a lot almost in like Texas is like, I like to stay around the gizzard shad, and that's something you kind of want to do on some of these places in Florida as well. You know, they're getting a big gizzard shad population, and they eat big baits really well. They eat a glide really well. They eat a jerk bait really well. Like a Megabass Canada is a super good one. It's just a very big profile jerk bait. And there's also another really cool bait, which I touched on after the tournament, but it's a Megabass Shallow Runner, the SR 110. And what's huge about that thing is, we often I used to throw a regular 110 on Kissimmee a ton, but that thing, even just a regular 110 and scoping in 5 foot, it's almost hard to keep it off the bottom. After so many twitches, your bait's gonna get too low, and you can't keep it above them and get those bites that you need to get. So the Shallow Runner is super cool because it's a pretty high floater. It floats at a good rate, but also in the design of the bill on it, no matter how far you cast it and how hard you work it down, it's only going to get to a very maximum depth of 4 foot. I mean, that is absolute maximum depth. So that bait, you can work a lot more efficiently down in Florida, or I imagine on Chesapeake, it would be a killer. Any of these shallow places where, they bite a jerkbait really good. Now you can have a jerkbait to actually fish over the grass or keep over the fish in shallow water. And that's a big key. That's one bait that I've been catching them on everywhere the last year and a half. It's been that shallow running 110. But, a lot of the other scoping tactics work good, like a big minnow and, all those sort of things. So it was really a conglomerate of a few things, but staying around those big fish was key. That's for sure.
Well, I wanted to give a shout out to Keith Cowan. I don't know if he heard us talking about his massive record-setting Chesapeake bag he caught, but he's watching us. Good to have you with us, Keith. Congrats again. And I see your hair getting blown back over there, Riz. Like this shallow water jerk bait. It seems like it's something you're already dialed in on.
Yeah. Alec, I don't know if you had your hands involved in the design of that or any of that, but if you did, you made it. It was it's really good. Yeah.
It's a killer.
It's a good one.
I didn't have any hand in the design of this.
How long has that bait been out? Because I didn't get on it until inside the last year, but
yeah, it's only been out for about a year and a half.
Okay.
It's been in the works for a while.
I got you. That's why I wasn't sure, because I know you've done a lot with Megabass here in the last couple of years, which is awesome. I love to see it. But yeah, it's a good one.
It's a killer, man. And the hooks that come on it. What do you think about the new hooks?
They're cash.
They're the deal, and I try to tell people it's coming. It's coming. They're all gonna have new hooks at some point.
I'm excited about that bait for some non-traditional jerkbait approaches, I would say. Once water starts really cleaning up nice, you can
no doubt. And from a no scope perspective, it's been really nice too, because when you can't see, necessarily, you've only got 2D, and let's say you're going through some areas that you didn't practice, you don't know exactly how they set up. It's a little nicer to go through maybe some of those shallow areas with that jerkbait, just because you're not going to get fouled up or hung as much and stuff that you're throwing around but can't see. It just seems to be a little more efficient in some scenarios. It's a really fun one.
Yeah. So here's what we're gonna do for you guys. Anybody that's watching live, when we go on break, we'll put a link in the chat for you guys to check out that jerkbait that we're talking about on Tackle Warehouse. It is an absolute killer. I'm not gonna try to keep it under the hat, Pete. I wore their tails out on that bait on the Upper Bay this year when they were still in their wintering, call it patterns. But when you live on a tidal, shallow body, tidal grass fishery and tidal fishery in general, a lot of times they're shallow. Their wintertime habitat is still, 6 foot and less. Yep. And it's a very effective.
Yeah. That's awesome. I didn't know it existed, Alex. So I'm using the 110, and I'm using mono, I'm using braid, and I'm snapping my rod 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
Out of the dirt and keep it up high. So I'm excited that not so excited that Rich has been keeping this a secret from me, but I'm excited I'll be clicking on that link that we're going to be putting up and getting a few of those. So
Alec, we obviously want to come back to the 37-pound day and really dive in there even more. But before we get to that, you mentioned moon phase at the beginning of the show and how much you pay attention to the warming trends and the cooling trends in Florida in accordance to the moon phase. And I'm intrigued by that. I'm a moon guy. I pay attention to it. I think it has more of effect on things that we give it credit for, not only in fish, but in wildlife in general. So what was the moon phase that you had during that event? What were you on? Moon rising, moon falling? What would you have?
Yeah, we were coming off of a full moon.
There
was a full moon about a week prior, so it
So
wasn't.
Yeah, go ahead.
It wasn't the greatest timing for a moon as far as bringing new fish in,
Right.
as it was, beginning of practice. We were seeing a lot of those leftover fish from that moon. And
so you mentioned that you had fish leaving.
Yeah, exactly. That's what kind of put the pieces together for me, as opposed to, some other people, they may have got into town and a lot of guys got good bites shallow, good spawn bites shallow, flipping, frog and Senko early on in practice, and they see, they didn't pay attention as much to the moon, but they paid attention to the weather conditions. And I think that a lot of people went into it assuming that just more fish were just going to pull up shallow because it was real nice.
But in reality, it was going the other way.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a good, that was a good way to look at it, because of the fact that we had a cold front followed by a warming trend. But really, in order to pull a whole new wave of fish up, you need either a full moon or a new moon. And one of those is better than the others. But yeah, it definitely comes down to having those weather trends and in the right order prior to the moon.
Right. What are some
a lot of what, kind of told me? I had seen it time and time again that, I just knew that these big ones were going to be pulling out. And they're not going to pull out. Some of them are fish that, might have pulled up real shallow to stage, but, and were kind of ready to do their thing, but might have decided to back off.
Right.
And oftentimes they're not going to back off all that far if they're just going to turn around and head right back up there in 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, when the new moon rolls up.
Right.
So oftentimes they don't go very far, and it's really about like looking at those main spawning areas, those places with all the males, the stuff that looks really good and is obvious.
Sure.
And then it's about taking a step back is really all it is. And I've come to learn a lot about that with smallmouths, growing up north, and it seems like they're way more cut and dry about like their timing, and if they're not up there, they're not going to be far. They're going to be right outside typically, like you have a basic spawning bay, and you've got males and small spawners up there. Well, all the females, smallmouth wise, are going to be on the 2 points outside of the bay, like that lead in, and it's way more cut and dry. And definitely in Florida, largemouth, that it seems like you could go about it like that. And oftentimes you can, but sometimes it's definitely a little more tricky. Just breaking down, that there's often a lot of good looking stuff and a lot of routes they could take, but they don't take all of them. And in this case, for this tournament, I really just dialed in
on that route,
dialed in on that highway. I mentioned the 3 areas. 2 areas were like staging fish on structure, but the one main area was quite literally like the highway that the big ones were using to travel in and out. And at times I could almost just power pull down and watch them swim by.
Yeah,
And I
what
was
did that area have to offer, like bottom composition wise? Like, what were you working with there?
it was basically a large area with isolated pads and Kissimmee
Okay.
grass,
Okay.
and a little bit of pads mixed in with Kissimmee grass. But they could swim from those spawning areas. Like, let's say I'm looking at a pad patch, isolated pad patch that they might spawn in. I could visually with my eyes see the pads that they spawn in, and then I could look in the other direction and essentially like know that exact, like, I was positioned on basically like a outside grass line with shell and like a shell bar, and there's a little bit of brush and stuff scattered around the area, but I was basically, I was in between an area with shell and a lot of bait and some deep water access, and then to my left and then to my right I could physically look up and see the pads that they would spawn in. So this area, everything was very close by, and within access.
Yep.
And oftentimes, no matter where you go, that's like a recipe for big bass. It's almost like I've heard old timers in Texas say the biggest bass in the lake live in the shallowest water that's next to the deepest water. Like, that is oftentimes the case in a lot of places. Just when you've got everything that they need in one area, typically they're not going to be too far. So yeah, that one area was definitely a key to it all. And it helped because I had caught some big ones there prior to the tournament. I kind of knew the setup. I didn't know if it was necessarily going to go down the way I wanted it to in the event, but I knew there was a possibility that I could intercept some very, very big ones as they were moving through. And another thing that helped is, other than my best friend Garrett swinging in and fishing that stretch a little bit here and there with me in the tournament, other than the two of us, there was not a boat in sight.
Wow.
Not a single angler in sight. So it was that helps a lot too.
Yeah, that helps.
When you're fishing by yourself, you're either going to finish last or you're
yeah.
Especially in Florida, right?
Yeah. You got it right that time. I wanted to ask you, Alec, about this is the first year with the 3 hours. Was that the first tournament you had to make those choices?
No, it's been a learning curve this year, though. Figuring out the 3 hours. The first event I fished this year was on the Toyota on Sam Rayburn earlier in the year, and had a good finish. Finished up 4th, but that one was certainly tougher as far as figuring out when and where you're going to use your time, and it's been tricky to kind of fish practice with that in mind. And there's definitely some skill involved trying to figure out the best way to go about it, because at the end of the day, I thought that the no scope period would play a lot more in these events. It has not. They're getting one in less than 3 hours a day, essentially. Wow. Like, I really won this Toyota on Kissimmee in, basically like 7 hours and 10 minutes of scoping. Like, weighed all those fish within 7 hours of scoping, and it didn't line up to be as good of a bite, not during the non-scoping period, just because of the moon phase and everything of that nature. I thought it would end up playing in this tournament a lot more. But yeah, a lot of these tournaments now, they're just getting one in 3 hours. So you better have a really good plan on how to catch them quick.
Wow, that says a lot. You weren't able in these highways to trigger bites without
No.
Wow.
You could probably do it for days and only catch a couple big ones. And you would think that
Wow.
you would think that with that many big ones swimming around and you being on the best stretch that you could be on, that you could, catch some fish no scope. But I mean, I think out of 3 days, my co-anglers just fishing behind me, I think only one bass was caught on that place in particular.
Wow.
And it's just crazy, it's like it seems like you would just be able to maybe change your approach and get in front of some fish, but it really was a lot harder and a lot more advanced than you think it would be.
It speaks to the area that you found, Alec, and how the fish are using that area, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're on the highway, dude. They're on the move. When you're
on
on the highway, you're not at the restaurant. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Some of these fish,
I'll eat and drive, but I don't stop at the restaurant if I'm on the highway. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But
they're nonstop. They're moving. Just getting a bait in front of them, even with scope, hard.
Might as well,
Yeah, getting a bait in front of them, even with scope, is hard. I saw some 8 to 10 pounders during that event that I didn't get my bait on. Get my bait on. And
on that exact topic, Alec, hitting fish that are moving with your scope. If you could give some listeners a piece of advice that maybe use live scope and struggle to kind of see and predict the direction that a fish is moving, can you give them a piece of advice that might help them?
A good piece of advice, often that I have to tell myself in kind of those scenarios is, we see one right away and I'd be clued in and, I know I'm getting into a little section where I'm probably going to see a big one, and I see that big one. Oftentimes we get excited. We want to rush. We want to throw on them right away. And a lot of times I like to almost just say, okay, there she is, backpedal a tiny bit and really get back on her, really make a mental note of like, okay, she's quartering in this direction. She's moving slow. I can tell she doesn't know I'm here yet. It's a different case scenario when they get a sense that you're there. Then you have to act a lot quicker. But, if you can establish, okay, she's moving in this direction, maybe it's away from me, maybe it's towards me. I need to make the correct approach. But basically just taking an extra second to see what's going on and, track her movement and make sure that the biggest thing I even teach with clients, I do a lot of trophy hunting trips where all we do is fish for, trophy bass. We're not out to catch 10 in a day. We're out to catch 1 to 5 fish and, have bags over 40, 50 pounds. I do that honestly on the regular lot that I don't even talk about down in Florida, but do these trophy trips. And, it's a lot about a lot of what I teach is you only have one shot on a really big fish. You've got one chance. If you cast wrong and make your presentation wrong and she follows and she's just not biting it, you're not going to get a secondary cast to get that fish to change its mind. You got one shot, and if you blow it, then we got to go to the next one. We got to go find another one. So
that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it is. It's really about, but it pays off when you really take your time and you understand what's going on, and that what I'm doing is the correct approach in order to get these fish to bite. We're in the right window and got the right baits, and just about making that correct cast and presentation. But it's always extremely important to do that on your first cast. Your first cast has to be perfect. So just taking that maybe a little extra 10 seconds to just kind of feel out the situation and, make sure your hook point's good. I've even done that in tournaments in Texas. Like a couple of years ago for the Invitational, I was scoping along this creek channel and I see a fish over 10 pounds set up in a tree. As opposed to casting to it, I backpedaled, changed my position, changed my angle, checked my hook point, checked my line. got my scope back on her, lined up right cast, made it. First cast presentation, caught her, and everything was good, and it was an 11.4. But it was like taking that extra second to make sure my hook's good, my line's good, my angle is good, you know, and oftentimes that's going to help you out a lot more getting some big ones to bite.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say, and it makes so much sense. Like if I'm looking at a fish visually,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm going to get myself in a position to be able to set the hook correctly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, make sure my bait's tight, check my line. You know what I mean? I'm going to do all those things before I ever make that cast.
It might be one of those things where you're like, almost if you're like sight fishing one, you're like, oh, I could throw on her right now.
Yeah.
If that stick is kind of in the way, it might interfere with my presentation. She might eat it and go this way. I'm going to wait for her. I'm going to watch her and wait for her to move on this side of the pot, and then get my cast on her. That's definitely some things that, you know, have helped me out a ton. It's just taking my time and really, you know, paying attention to what I'm looking at before I make those casts.
With 3 hours and the clock's ticking,
it's ticking.
It's hard to make.
It's ticking.
It's crazy. I can't. Sometimes I'm out there in the 3 hours, and I'm like, man, I don't know how we were able to scope all day last year. Like, it feels crazy.
How is that working? Like, from the, you know, just actually in the boat with your partner, who's keeping time? How are you documenting that we're 3 hours on, 3 hours off? How do you actually do that?
Well, in the pro circuit, we have a really good system. In the pro circuit, we have a really good system with the lock boxes, and they have a built-in timer and everything on them. So it really does make it a lot easier. It only takes a second for you to unplug your power cables and get them in there. And then they, you know, review it at the end of the day and make sure you didn't go over on time or anything. It really is a great system. It's been working for everybody over the course of the season. I like it a lot. I think it works great.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you know, going into the Toyota Series events, we don't have those lock boxes. So I actually keep just a timer. I just start a timer on my phone, and usually about 10 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes short, just so I have, you know, when it goes off, I know I've got 5 minutes to kind of reel in, unplug my stuff, or turn off my graphs, whatever the case may be. But some events I've paid attention to it, and, you know, I've had my timer on, and then other events I've done it, and then my co-angler has put a timer on for me as well. And just so, you know, he knows, I guess. And
right.
And it's been good. It's been good for, you know, all the tournaments I've fished. It's been cool to, you know, on Rayburn, it worked out to where I would just scope every morning, my first 3 hours starting out. And then the rest of the day, you know, I got to like set up on offshore places where, you know, my co and I could both cast and both catch fish. And on that final day on Rayburn, my co and I probably caught 120, like during the no scope period on like Carolina rig and an A rig and stuff. But just, it was really cool. We got to just set up on schools and both catch them and, you know, figure out the casts and work together. So it's been really fun. You know, it brings a new aspect to these events. That's for sure. You know, something we haven't seen in the last few years. So I've been enjoying it, but it is tricky, and it does mess with you a little bit. And,
man,
you know, on certain bodies of water, you know, you start adding in run times in between spots, and next thing you know, your 3 hours of scope is really only 2 hours because you had to travel in between, you know, your 3 different spots or whatever the case may be. So it's tricky, and you got to certainly plan for it and practice. You have to have a good plan going into things.
Hey, that's great to have a good plan, but you know how this sport is, man.
I know.
you get lost out there sometimes, and
I know it.
gee,
It'll all change overnight.
yeah, that's well, you didn't get lost. Take us to the last day on that you got to lock through. For those of you that don't know Kissimmee, the tournaments, you got to lock through to get there and run through a couple of lakes. So you got a little bit of a run time, and you're turning your scope on, and you're in good shape in the tournament. Take me through those first moments of day 3.
Day 3, I only still had the lead, but it was, a relatively small one. It was only like a pound or 2. And which, some places is a big lead, but in Florida, it's really not. It's only 1 bite. So you almost can't even look at it as a lead. And really just took my time running down. I drove slow. I was first in line, but, by the time I got down to Kissimmee, like 12 other boats had passed me. And it was actually perfect. I'm not like a fast driver. I don't run around all crazy. I take my time, and all those boats passing me running through the river was awesome, because there was about 5 or 6 Kissimmee Lake locals waiting at the mouth of the Kissimmee River. And I was so far behind that they just followed those guys right to their spots. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. I couldn't have planned it out any perfect. I mean, huge thank you to Brody Campbell and Chad and all those boys pulling all those local guys away and bringing them to their stuff instead of mine. It was amazing. So anyways, I roll out. I lock through and run through the Kissimmee River, run through Cypress, Hatchnahaw, and get to the mouth of Kissimmee. And, I had a pretty big run through Kissimmee. And I get to my starting area, and there's not a boat in sight. And drop the troll, kind of get situated, pull rods out, the whole 9, and turn my scope on. And I started in one, it was one general area that they were using, and you could catch them throughout, but there was a couple like key little sections, depending on the day, maybe. Like if you'd scope through this big long area, you might find like 2 sections where every time you make a pass through, it'd be like 100 or 200 foot section. Every time you make a pass through, you'd see a big one or 2. So I started on one of those and put myself right in position. And on my first little, like probably a 200-foot pass, I catch like a 280, a 380, one almost 5, and I think a couple other small ones. So in my mind, I've got like 2 pretty good fish and some small ones, and I continue making my way down, and I'm not seeing much. And I was about to get to another little section that is pretty good, or was pretty good during the event. And I decided, I'm like, you know what? I caught all those fish. I basically caught a limit in this one little section, and that section gets good sometimes. So I was like, I need to turn around and go back through there. So I start going back through that stretch, and within like less than 10 minutes, I catch 2 over 8 pounds. Like boom, boom, back to back. And I'm like, oh man, I've got 2 over 8. I've got one close to 5 and one that's close to 4. I'm like, I'm 30 minutes into the tournament. I'm like, I've got a shot at this one already. And I actually run down. I leave the little stretch, and I run way down further, and to a boat I see down there. And I know that's the only other boat around. It's definitely my buddy Garrett. So I run all the way down there, and I meet him, and I'm like, dude, don't leave without me today. I'm probably going to win this thing. I've got like a bag already. I'm only like 30 minutes in. I've got 2 giants and 2 really good fish. I could probably catch 30 pounds today and have a shot at this thing. I'm like, don't leave without me. If you're running out of Kissimmee and I'm nowhere to be seen, like look around or something, like I'm like, take any precaution I could take.
Look for the EPIRB.
Like, yeah, because we can't, you can't talk on the phone or anything. So I'm like, this one time I'm seeing him, I'm like, I better go tell him,
Yeah.
And I actually tell him the little zone. He knew what zone I caught him in, where I'm like, you got to go make a pass through there. and I'll start right here and work my way back down to you. So he's like, they're still going on? I'm like, they're still going. So he leaves, he runs down to the good little stretch, and I work my way down to him. And as I'm working my way back down, you know, I'm talking to my co-angler. He's like, super nice dude. He's asked me about how I got started, and I'm reliving all these moments when I'm like 14 years old on Champlain by myself, and just looking back on how this tournament's going, how this morning is going. You know, mind you, I'm only like 30 to 40 minutes in, and I'm working on a big bag already. And I just know, based on what I've already seen, at this point, I knew that if I spent the rest of my 3 hours there, that I was probably going to win the tournament. Just based on how things were going. I didn't know if I'd land them, but I figured, you know, I'd get them to bite. And I'm working my way back down through this section, and I see a real big one, like basically like hugging bottom, not moving too much, and it takes me like 7 or 8 casts to get a bait on her correctly. And I catch her, and it's like another one over 8 pounds. And I've got my mind, I'm like, I've got 3 over 8, and I've got like 1 almost 5 and 1 almost 4. I'm like, this is probably the tournament right here. Not gonna lie, I'm shedding a little tears. I got tears coming. I'm like retying the nose of the boat is like in the Kissimmee grass, and I'm like retying. I got tears. I'm trying to collect myself. I'm like breathing heavy. You know, it's just one of those moments that this is what we all fish for, and to get that feeling, and I hadn't had that feeling, and you know, it felt like a while. It doesn't ever come often, and when everything is just lining up, and I'm recollecting myself and retying and making sure, you know, my hook points are good and my rod line is good. And it takes me like 10, 15 minutes to like collect myself, and I back out of the Kissimmee grass and I start going down the line again. I'm starting to get closer to the area I started in at this point. And, you know, I'm just trying to cull that like 1 almost 4 pounder that I have. And I'm cruising along, and I finally am like breathing normal again, no tears. Like I'm like back on track, and I watch a big one. Quite literally, I watched him swim out of the Kissimmee grass, pop out of the Kissimmee grass line, and get over the shell. And I'm like, oh man, like that's her. That's number 5. And I throw to her, and this thing, the second it saw my bait, it just flies up and eats it and swims like 3 foot towards me. So much so to where I have to just pick up all this extra line before I go to set the hook on her, just knowing that it's going to be like in the back of her throat. And all the other big fish, you know, that day I was like letting out a yell or whatever when they'd get in the net. And this one, I'm just dead silent. It's jumping. My co-angler nets it, and I just pick it up, and I like looking towards the back of the boat, like in my co-angler's direction. And I'm like, that's a 7.5 pounder for sure. There's no way they're beating me in this tournament. There's no way. And I well that fish, and my smallest one is a 5, and I scoop back down to where Garrett is in that initial first section, and he's like, dude, you weren't kidding, they're down here. Like, I just caught a 5. I'm seeing big ones. He's like, did you catch any more on the way back down? I'm like, dude, I caught another 8 and another 7.5. He's like, what the heck? Like, this is crazy. He's like, what do you even have? I'm like, I don't know, somewhere between 35 and 38. I hadn't weighed any of them yet. I was just eyeballing them, and I ended up culling a 5 for like a 5.12, and at this point it's like an hour and 10 minutes into the tournament, and
longest day after that ever.
Oh, the longest day. And then, you know, an hour and a half. I was an hour and a half into the scope period, and Jody White rolls up to take some pictures, and he's like, well, how's it going? I'm like, it's going good, but you're late. You missed it.
Oh.
And he's like, how much do you have? And I'm like, probably at least 35. And he's like, well, 35 is good. He's just being real nonchalant. He had just taken, had been taking photos of other competitors. So he, can't say anything long. He's a super good friend of mine. So I'm sure he would have liked to have been like, oh, you got the win, dude. You're going to win. But, he can't say anything along those lines out there.
He's just got to stay pro. Like,
yeah, 35 is good. And he's just taking pictures of me. And, and my scope period ended. And, I had like one more opportunity at a really big one, but didn't make it happen. And then, that 3 hours was up. And at this point, it's still just Garrett and Jody and I on this area. And Garrett asked me, he's like, what is your plan now? What do you even do? I'm like, I'm running back to Toho.
Heck yeah.
I ran back to Toho, and I quite literally the rest of the day, like, listened to music on the front of the boat and just trolled around and let my co-angler fish. And I would just power pull down on isolated pads and let him throw in there. And it was crazy. I didn't fish the rest of the day, but I was pretty confident, and just everything felt right. I knew what happened was what it was, and if Brody was going to beat me, he needed like 40 pounds. And although it could happen, I knew what areas he was fishing in, and although it could happen, I knew it wasn't like extremely likely. And that pretty much was what it was. It was one of the most outstanding tournaments I'll ever fish. That's for sure. It was perfect.
That was awesome. Man. What an amazing day. That's crazy. Did all those big ones? Were they all on the jerk bait? Well, you sound like you were flipping one of them with more of a power bait. What did the 37 pounders come on?
They came on a mixture of all that stuff, but it was interesting because, all the fish I caught, I was scoping very close to the boat, like 50 foot or less feet away.
Right.
And, part of that might be just because of a lot of that is because there's quite a few other species swimming around, big tilapia, and there's not like giant catfish or anything, but there is catfish and there's gar and, schools of other bait and everything. And in shallow water, it's especially some shallow, dirty water with that much life and everything going on. It's almost like a Tennessee River type deal where you really got to know what you're throwing at. You're never throwing at anything 120 foot away like you would up north,
Right.
I'm seeing these fish, and I really have to take that second to know for sure, okay, that's not a gar, that's not a tilapia, that is a bass, and he's heading towards me, and he's only 30 foot away. So, I got to act quick and cut him a little short. And all those fish I did hook them very close to the boat. All of them were within 50 foot, within the 50 foot range. And it's just a different kind of aspect, scoping shallow with that many species around. It could be hard to get a bait on them. And those fish there too, you'll see them for a good 3 seconds. And then it's almost like they would sink down to bottom on that shell, and you would just lose them. You'd lose them amongst everything else going on, and it was just hard to get a bait from. And even Garrett told me, like, dude, this is like advanced level scoping here. This is not easy. And part of that was, what keeps those places, kind of quiet for Garrett and I, is because even though, like, it is what it is, and it is so good when it lines up, you have to really, really know what you're looking at, and you have to know to stay in certain zones and really look hard in order to find them and be able to make those presentations on them. It's nothing it's not like Texas where you roll into the right drain and there's 20 big ones on the bottom and the back of the drain. Like, it's not that simple to see and to recognize. So a lot of that is what kind of kept it a little sneakier and kept people away.
Yeah. Well, that's some pretty advanced stuff, man. A monster win, a record-setting win, and another win. So that's great stuff, Alec. I mean, it's you got a season in front of you, but I want to ask you more about my favorite lake. What's going on Champlain? We're talking about snowpack going away. Talking about it's got to be pre-spawn up there all around, I imagine.
Man, it's pre-spawn madness, much like you know it, Pete. It is it's a good time out there right now. Whether you want to throw a mag draft, a crankbait like a DT6 or a jerk bait or drag something, you can get a lot of bites right now. It's pre-spawn in the north, and Champlain's a special place. But you know, as far as looking at where the lake is at right now and what we might be able to see later on in the year, everything is looking really good. You know, as you know, we've dealt with a lot of low water years, more so than not over the last like 8 years. More of them have been low water than not. We had a very record low last year at the end of the year. You know, you could just see the whole sandbar bridge and all the sand flats around Mallets. It was all out of the water. It was kind of, you know, I was a little bit worried about what Champlain might look like this year had we have not gotten, you know, a lot of snow and a lot of rain this winter and melt. But as far as things are looking right now, it's looking very good. The lake is certainly full. I've been in New York for about the last week and a half, 2 weeks. I'm about to hit the road again and head south, and I'll be back up in June. But since I've been here, you know, I've watched the lake actually rise about 2 foot from the last bit of runoff and rain we've been having. So honestly, it's setting up to be a really good year. It's setting up to be a really good largemouth year on Champlain. As you know, that higher water, you know, it puts them up where we want them to be. And smallmouth fishing will be good. It's always good, but certainly on low water years, smallmouth shine, and on you know, full and high water years, the largemouth, you know, they certainly show up to play. So I'm excited. I've got 2 big events here this year. I've got a Toyota and the Pro Circuit. The Pro Circuit comes first. It's at the end of July. Nice. So, you know, with that 3 hours of scope, it's going to make things interesting this year on Champlain. You know, I have a feeling a lot of dudes are going to, you know, catch some smallmouth scope in, but then they're going to have to, you know, change their priorities and kind of go towards catching some of those big largemouth, because I really think, based on how things are looking right now, those big largemouth they're going to be accessible, they're going to be biting, and I think they're going to have a bigger play in events this year, given the water and the new rules than they have in the last few years. So nice. I'm excited, and it's gonna make for, you know, some different events on Champlain this year. We've got the Elite is no scope as well, and we're gonna see a lot of cool. We're gonna see a lot of cool stuff come about on Champlain.
I got to ask you this, theoretical. I'm putting you in this situation. Water's up. Largemouth are in play, right? You've got 3 hours of scope. Are you picking early? Or are you picking late? Without any practice?
I think I know his answer, but I want to let him do it.
Yeah.
What
I'm picking early, just because of a low light deal. I prefer fishing for big fish and low light. You're just going to get more opportunities. But there are times on Champlain, and I've seen it time and time again. Actually, when I won the BFL here a couple years ago, this exact instance happened. And there's times when you might think they're going to bite first thing because they've been biting first thing all week, and then they don't bite first thing. And it takes them until about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock to turn around. And that could be something that screws some people up if it lines up in the tournament. Because I could very well see some people, and Champlain is Champlain, so you're going to turn your scope on in the morning and you're going to catch fish. But if the real big ones are not up and not positioned right and not doing what they're supposed to be doing first thing, then you could ruin your 3 hours of scope in the morning, and things could get right after you have to turn it off. So there is going to be some interesting aspects to it. And that's a big tip I should not have given up. But quite literally, that is something that somebody's going to have to, take into account coming into this event, and how they're going to prioritize, largemouth versus smallmouth and bite windows for the two. Because generally it's different time of the day. I like to target smallmouths at one time, and I like to target largemouths at the other. So it'll be interesting to see, but man, it's gonna make for some good footage between those two events and the elite with no scope. I mean, we're probably gonna see some things used on Champlain that we haven't seen in the last few years in a while, some techniques and some strategies, and it'll be really cool to see. So hopefully I can be on the right side of things and can catch them up.
Well, momentum is on your side, brother, and that's a big thing. That's a big thing. So just keep riding that wave, and it's awesome. What an awesome moment. Thanks for sharing that emotional moment on day 3 with us, man. That's powerful stuff.
So cool.
I was right there with you, and it's just an awesome deal. What a monster bag and a great win again, and man, I'll we'll be watching you up on Champlain. Maybe we'll see you up there this year. Getting up there and doing some fishing myself. Hopefully, I haven't been on the lake for a minute, so
it's going to be a good one. You ought to come up for the Toyota.
Yeah.
When's the Toyota?
End of July. They swapped them around for the Northerns this year. Yeah. So Potomac first, and then Champlain, and then actually, my apologies. The Pro Circuit is end of July. The Toyota is the very end of August. So that's one that we haven't had a Toyota in that time period on Champlain in a while. So that one's going to be pretty interesting. It's typically a lot earlier of a deal, June, July, end of June or end of July. And in that case, we have a lot of post-spawn fish, and then the largemouths play, but not quite as much as we probably will see them play in August this year. So it'll be exciting. I imagine with the water the way it is, the grass will be up, and it'll be looking real good come August. So it's exciting.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to seeing you and rooting for you up there this year and the rest of the tournament trail. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
Thank you guys for having me. It's a blast as always.
Yes, sir. And keep riding that wave, brother. Keep it going.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Alec.
Alec Morrison, everybody, another win, a record-setting win with the Toyota Series. So it's awesome stuff, Riz. Let's take a quick break, and we're got a lot of stuff that we want to dive into when we come back. So we'll see you guys in just a minute.
We're off the clock to clock more fish, to fill our live wells and empty our coolers, because there's more to explore. The latest Humminbird fish finders work fast, see clearly, and know all the best spots. They fish even smarter paired with the Minn Kota, and break down the water like never before. If you like your plans loose and lines tight, then it's time to explore. Only with Humminbird. Get right to the fight. New Mega Live 2 forward-facing sonar puts you on more fish with an ultra-clear, rock-solid picture of underwater action. Next-gen clarity, next-level fun. Only with Humminbird.
Whitewater Fishing Gear, we build gear for the days that test your commitment. The ones launching before daylight, staying out when the wind picks up, and fishing through conditions most guys avoid. Engineered for protection, mobility, and all-day comfort. Built to perform when conditions turn rough, so you stay focused on the pursuit no matter how the elements shift. Whitewater Fishing Gear, built to brave the wave.
When the sun's up and the bite's on, clarity is everything. That's why serious anglers trust Redfin. Built for the water, designed for performance. Lightweight frames, crystal clear optics, and rugged durability that stands up to long days on the water. Thanks to Zeiss Repel technology, water, oil, and even sunscreen just slides right off the lenses. Your vision stays crystal clear. See more, fish smarter, and protect your eyes with Redfin. Redfin polarized sunglasses. Comfort, clarity, contrast.
Mother Nature may be tough. I'm tougher. I'll take you to chaos is the cost of entry, and where the fish are worth the fight. Because the bigger the question marks, the better the quest.
Welcome back, guys. Have you downloaded the Bass University app? If you have not done it, get yourself in the game and download the Bass University app, and you're going to be amazed. If you haven't seen it yet, you're going to love the new format and all the amazing things available for all of our subscribers over there at the new Bass U app. As I'm looking at the Mega Bass of Vision 110 SR FA. Look at that. That's a sweet little bait, man. That's something that we always used to use in Florida. We used to use a rogue, Riz. Throwing a rogue on they make a really shallow rogue.
Mm-hmm.
Throw it on a spinning rod.
Yeah.
It's really the only way you could get it out there. But
right
with this bait, wow. I know that.
Yeah, this bait's made right. And I'm really uncomfortable talking about this in case my competitors are watching on the bay. But Chuck asked, how does that bait compare to, say, an original floating Rapala? I didn't want to break Alec while he was rolling. But to answer your question, Chuck, is because it's made by Mega Bass, obviously you get the really good color patterns. You get the really good, attention to detail on the bait. The eyes play a big factor. Everything as far as how it's weighted, balanced, and constructed matches that of a Vision 110. So you get the castability of it. You get the castability to be able to throw it into the wind because of the sleek design. And you get the same. So, the magic, in my opinion, of what a Vision 110 does for you is you get a combination of roll and hunt. Okay. So when you have roll and hunt combined and light displacement off of that bait in multiple directions, it does a lot of good things for you that, makes it a little different from the original floating Rapala. Not that wasn't a great fish catching bait. I mean, hell, a million bass have been caught on a floating Rapala, but the Vision 110 SR, they did a great job at keeping the integrity of what makes a Mega Bass so good in triggering strikes and just keeping it shallower. And the SR stands for slow rise. A lot, you can confuse that with shallow running, but on the skew, it actually says slow rise. And that bait does truly slow rise. And right out of the pack, you have about I would call it a foot. You got about a 0.5 rise rate per foot. So, you're going to get a foot, but it's going to take you 6 seconds of rise to get a foot. So it's a very slow rising. And because of that nature of it, with upsizing your hooks and, using suspend strips, you can even manipulate that to make it an even slower rise. And in certain situations, especially in cold water, that can be wildly effective on a fish that's been living shallow all of its life and has never truly seen a suspending bait ever.
Yep.
So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. That's a really well done piece of dialogue on that bait, Riz.
I spent a little time with it.
Yeah. It's something, like I said, something I've been using the other bait. I bust the lips off of how many 110s are.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like the thing with the 110 is that, you know, on the true 110 with stock hooks out of the pack, you can make that bait truly suspend with the whatever Megabass calls them. But if you upgrade your hooks even at all, you start into that slow sinking category, and you combine that with fluorocarbon and the nature of sinking fluorocarbon line. Even if your bait's truly suspending, every time you hit it, she pulls down, she pulls down, she pulls down. And, you know, combining a shallow running jerk bait or a slow rising jerk bait with braided line, with monofilament line,
works in that zone.
I didn't think I would talk about that on our podcast, Pete, but we got to do it, right? We're here for the people.
Dude, we of all people are the ones that are got books. So, but I appreciate that insight on that bait. It's clear you spent some time with it, and I think a lot of people can appreciate that, myself included. But we've got a lot of stuff going on at Bass U. Rick. Talk to me about the schedule you got on your schedule.
Yeah, man. So I'll go ahead and talk about the next two, because you teased it a little bit at the beginning that we have a Steve Kennedy seminar coming out. But this week's seminar is Andrew Loberg, Bassin' in the Grass. And Andrew Loberg is a California rooted angler who cut his teeth heavily on the California Delta and understanding grass fishing and just in general. And he's spent the, you know, adult portion of his life now living on Gunnersville. So, you know, coming from a background of having it to, you know, living in a grass fishing environment for the last 5 years, call it, he spent a lot of time, you know, maximizing his skills in that scenario. And man, he does a really great job in this week's seminar of laying out the seasonal approach and the tools required to be successful in said seasons and scenarios. And even goes as far to break down specific types of grass and how each of them they fit into the playbook differently throughout the year. So it's really a great comprehensive seminar for somebody that, you know, is looking to either advance what they're doing in their grass fishing, or you need a launching point on grass fishing. It covers that too. So definitely check out that seminar coming out this week on Thursday. And then next week, like you mentioned earlier, Pete, we have Steve Kennedy, the legend. Steve Kennedy. There he is. Check him out. Breaking down
Mr. Auburn himself.
Mr. Auburn himself, breaking down the Sneaky Pete glide bait, in addition to big bait fishing in general. Steve being Steve, we had an amazing experience with him in our booth at the Classic. And boy, we were able to, you know, not only pry out some amazing educational information from Steve during that time that we were with him, but also just the storytelling and the history and the giant fish that he's caught on these oversized baits over the years, going as far back to Clear Lake, and, you know, how he's progressed with these baits moving through time. It's going to be a special one. We're excited to work with Steve. We were excited to work with Steve, excited to do more with him in the future. So be on the lookout for that as well, coming down the pipe. So
awesome stuff. Thank you, Steve Kennedy. Thank you, G-Rat, for helping us put that together. And Stefan, let's give a little shout out to Stefan.
Yeah.
The facilitator.
So made it happen.
Good stuff. I want to just express some concern and well wishes. There was a boat accident out in California in the Delta. There were six kids in a high school. Well, 4 kids and 2 boat captains all seemed to be impacted by that. But it was amazing, Rich, because this is a boat accident that I've been around and so close to it, and it's a common thing where one boat slows down, comes down off pad, and the boat behind it does not respond or see it happen, or is distracted on the bank or what have you, and runs over the boat that comes pad. So broken ribs, some punctured lung, one of the boys is dealing with, and
it's
best.
Hate to hear that. Hate to hear that.
Well, the high school and the college angling is so prolific around the country, and it's great that we have boat captains out there working with these kids and helping them through this process. This is a mistake that I've seen on the top level happen, and it's
I mean, it's like tailgating somebody on the highway. There's
same thing.
Really no purpose, nothing gained. Look, when you're driving boats, man, you got to put egos aside, dude. Like, we're not out there to, have a contest of seeing who's the fastest boat, whatever, first to the spot, whatever. If something like this happens, it all gets thrown out the window. None of it matters. And I mean, I'm sure none of this was obviously intentional, but like a lot of times this happens, Pete, when guys are coming out of locks and you're, or running shallow water areas, and the lead boat decides to come off a pad because they're not sure if they're going to be able to continue to run it. And a lot of those scenarios, like if you're coming out of a lock and you're in order or whatever, I don't know exactly what the situation was, but a lot of that stuff can get worked out just through communicating. Like, hey, are you gonna run this whole thing on pad? And then when you're trailing a boat like that, you don't need to be on there. You don't need to be right on the stern of that boat. You can leave a half a football field length, and you're not going to lose more than 5 seconds.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, just calm down. Be aware. And
be like Alec. Let all the boats pass you so that the locals get pulled to somebody else's fish.
Yep.
That was amazing. I don't know. I know Alec's a pretty laid back, calm, cool, and collected guy, but I wonder if there might have been a little bit of strategy there, Pete, that, he was enjoying his morning boat ride and kind of knew that.
Yeah.
Let them all go.
Those guys. They have to be.
But thoughts go out to the high school kids. I hope everybody has a smooth, full recovery.
I teach kids, and when you're trailering somebody, I never get up in their boat wake.
No.
If I'm close, I stay out of their boat trail, and just in case that guy, because anything could happen.
Yeah,
the kid could get pulled. The motor could blow up right in front of you. They could hit something. That boat stops. You want to make sure you have a safe path around them when you're in tight quarters like that. But want to give big congratulations to Bass University speakers who crushed it this week. Jacob Fouts won his first Elite Series event. What an awesome thing on the Arkansas River. He was running forever, going through locks to get to the water where he was fishing, and challenged mightily on day 4 in that tournament, Riz.
Yeah.
And his mental toughness was really, I was impressed.
Yeah.
Dude, I was impressed. Things weren't going well. Like his bite had dissipated. The fish he had located on beds were not there or not reactive. He had to adjust, and found his way into the winner's circle. So that was a fantastic win. He's been a guest on the podcast, and of course he was a speaker. He's a guide on Lake Chickamauga talking about deep cranking on the Tennessee River. Guys, go check it out. That pattern's coming. It's coming soon. It's probably a month away. So it's a good time to catch up. And of course, the man, another Bass University instructor, Jacob Wheeler, who is just lighting things on fire with another win. Well, his first Red Crest win, and doing a variety of things. But I did see him fishing chatterbait on the final day, and just amazing how dominant he has been in the sport. So congratulations to Jacob Wheeler on another great win. So with that being said, without any further ado, Riz, we're gonna wrap this show up. I want to thank Alec for being with us, and thanks all of our supporters, Whitewater, Thump Gel, redfin, Minn Kota, hummingbird. Thank you so much for being part of the Bass University program. Thank you guys for subscribing and watching Bass University, and we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you next week on another episode of Bass University Live.